Welcome back on the AM show. It is that time of the morning where I get to share with you my blunt thoughts. You know, I cut incisively. I'm like a surgeon looking at the critical issues that affect all of us, germane to our national life. But, you know, sometimes I must admit, I do get tired talking about Ghana's problems. It's so overwhelming sometimes. And I'm not just talking about maybe this administration, maybe more within this administration. But sometimes I just think about Ghana. Take, for example, the bit about the central bank and the losses we have incurred. Again, our central bank. And some people trying to make comparisons about, other banks in certain places also incurred some losses. So when Singapore was doling out $1,000 to every citizen, that is the equivalent of at least 15,000 cedis now. Where were we? You know, other countries and the social systems and everything else they have. Can we compete? Can we? So when we make these assumptions without drawing the proper linkages, the nexus, then you ask yourself, what kind of comparisons do we want to bring to the fore? Especially when you cite these countries in other areas, health and other, and they say, oh no, why are you comparing a third world country? I don't like that term, but yeah, a developing country to a purportedly developed country. When it suits them, I guess it's different strokes for different folks. But this morning, I don't want to talk about any of that. I want to focus on two critical issues. And that is why I've titled my blunt thoughts today, Non-existent Wi-Fi and a Cost Crisis, Ghana's Deepening Woes. Non-existent Wi-Fi and the Cost Crisis, Ghana's Deepening Woes. It was almost a kind of. But please, come to the slides with me. Let's address some of these issues. So, on this Wi-Fi bit about our schools and senior high schools, to be specific, and the promise of giving them Wi-Fi and the quantum of money we've invested in it, there are some interesting details there. I'll look at both sides, including the Ministry of Education and what it has had to say on this. But if you look at the 2016 manifesto of the NPP, it said the NPP will, in collaboration with the private sector, provide free Wi-Fi coverage for senior, secondary, and tertiary institutions nationwide, dedicated to learning, administration, and enhancing the capacity to do research. So, senior high schools, enhance the capacity to do research. Give them Wi-Fi. Next slide. Shall we go to the next slide? All right, so we'll try to get that. Now, in terms of the payment for no internet, according to the fourth estate, government paid for a service provider 56 million Ghana cedis for no internet in the schools. That's what the fourth estate has brought to bear on the back of the analysis they have made and the visits to schools. Now, in some schools, internet connectivity has been absent for over a year. You can cite, for example, Accra Academy, among other institutions that say, listen, we've even had to fall back on other mechanisms, which we fund ourselves, when in fact, a contractor had been paid to do this. So what exactly happened? 96% of schools visited in June and July 2023 had no internet connectivity. 96%. That's 9.6 out of 10. Now, when you look at the next slide, the internet stopped working when we were in Form 2. We no longer use it at the ICT lab. That's a final year student of one of these schools. Another one, this is from an IT coordinator in a school visited. There's no Wi-Fi anywhere. It's a white elephant. In other words, a charade, non-existent. But if we go to the next slide, we get a bit of a breakdown of the total cost. So if you look at the response from the Ministry of Education, they are saying the total is 84.4 million Ghana cedis. On the breakdown, phase 1, 717 senior high schools, The cost, 59.9 million Ghana cedis. Phase 2, the registration of educational offices, regional education offices, 46 colleges of education, so the regional education offices, 46 colleges of education, and then 260 district education offices to the tune of 24.5 million Ghana cedis. Sometimes I wish we could have a more incisive breakdown. And those are the things that when you go to them, they will not give you. And you put in an RTI request and it becomes what it is, an albatross round your neck. So you sum the two and you get that figure there. And it had to do with supply, installation, and hardware maintenance, according to the Ministry of Education. Now, if we go to the next slide, again, on the response, they talk about monthly internet cost of 6.37 million Ghana cedis in 2019, which was revised to 11.52 million Ghana cedis in 2023. Surprised? Don't be. The ministry does not pay if services do not reach 50% in a particular month. So my question then is, in 2023, for example, when between June and July, 96% of these schools had no internet, what happened within that window? What happened? There are committees in place to vet all invoices before payments are made. Suffice it to say that if you want to get into these, just as with school feeding and everything else, it's a can of worms. But I'll leave it there for now. Next slide. The Ministry of Education paid 3.6 million Ghana cedis instead of 6.49 million submitted after vetting in February 2024. And of course, this was after some of these surveys had already been conducted. The Ministry of Education, upon evaluation, is considering termination of aspects of the contract in schools with challenges. Aspects of the contract, termination. Question is, if some of what we are experiencing now, or some of what has emerged now hadn't emerged, would we be hearing of some of these? Would we? Why do we have to wait until there are exposés, until the rot is exposed, before we pretend we're acting? And yes, I use that word intentionally. Pretend we're acting. What goes into these contracts? Regardless of administration, right? One of the areas where the country bleeds the most, and even the system admits it, contracts. Contracts. It's crazy. Procurement. It is mad. That is where the most thievery happens. And it's about partyism, cronyism, this and that. Let's not pretend that other parties are saintly. But the extent to which it has been done. Look, sometimes the places I go to and the things I hear, even from people walking the corridors of power, will shock you. Some of them, of course, I can't regurgitate. I can't puke it out here. Higher crime chain. But those that we can, we do. And it's crazy. So when you sit in your own place and you say, oh, Benjamin, he's being too hard and all of that, think about your future. And if you're not concerned about your future, think about your children. And if you have no children, think about your relatives and their children. But next slide. From education, where we have all these contracts and we're bleeding. I can't talk about all of them. It's not possible within this space of time. I also want to move into the area of the cost of living, especially when it comes to food. Now, no human being can do without food. You can do longer without food than without water, depending on your physical situation, by and large. But the cost of food right now is maddening. And from time to time, I go to the market myself, so I know. But here are some things we gathered in recent times. Pepper, mako. There was a time when you'd buy 1 cedi, 2 cedis. It wasn't something mako. Now, in June 2023, you would have got a paint container for 65 cedis. And even then, people were complaining. Now, in June 2024, it goes for 200 Ghana cedis. That is a 207.69% increment, it means you've added on 135 cedis just to get the same paint container. Next slide. When it comes to tomatoes, again, paint container. And I'm talking about the normal paint container. I'm not talking of the big ones. No. When you're Leyland America, American Ketwano. What I say? In Ketwano, America. June 2023, 75 cedis. Here, June 2024, 180 cedis. A 140% increment. But when you look at the crate, that is where, next slide, that is where you see how much of a difference, really, it is. Now, if you look at the crate or the box or what we would call adaka, in January 2023, you would have got it for 1,500 cedis. This one, it busts my mind. I can't think far. I can't think madness because now it's going for 7,000 Ghana cedis. Do you know how much of an increment that is? 5,500 Ghana cedis added on. That is the 366% increment. Maba. Next slide. Then we can talk about the rising prices of food items. A tuber of yam has doubled in price. You used to get it for 15 Ghana cedis. Now it is what? 30 Ghana cedis per tuber. 100% increment. Next slide. Then you look at the rising prices of food items. Onion imports, for example, if you look at quarter 1, 2021 to 2024. So we're looking at each quarter, right? 2021, and you would see how the depreciation of our currency is affecting our purchasing power. 3.09 million was the equivalent of about 537.9K. That was what we were using to get our onions within that quarter. In 2022, $557,000, the equivalent of 3.55 million. Then you see the decline. In 2023, the same, you would notice that across the board, we're spending over 3 million Ghana cedis. I mean, in fact, there's even a repetition of the figure. Same figure, 2022 and 2024. But look at how much the purchase can be in dollar terms. From 537, 557, it's now 309,000. And in 2024, even lower, 290,000. It tells you that what we can do with our currency has declined. And so, in essence, what is happening here is this. 290,000 is almost half of this figure, 557,000. But look, we are spending the same amount, 3.55 million. That also tells you that would require practically twice as much to be able to purchase the same amounts that we were getting before. Which is why there was that cost crisis I speak of. Because then, if you were buying something for maybe 10 cedis, now it will cost you about 20 cedis or more. Because whoever has brought it in, after all the taxes, would also want to make a profit. That is why things are so expensive. Our currency, I don't want to use the word that is coming, but it is incredibly weak. I don't know whether we should stick to what the vice president said. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. There was a time when he said, the dynamics are not the same. Maybe he would have to explain to us. Next slide. Now, as we get ready to wind down on the prices of food items, we also look at our mineral fuel imports in billions of Ghana cedis. There's something interesting there. If you look at the data we've sourced from the Ghana Statistical Service, you would see that 2021, 2022, 2023, there is a steady increment in terms of the imports of these fuel products in relation to the food items, because that also contributes. The farmer has to get his food from the rural area to Accra, to Kumasi, to Sunyani, and some other places. It comes at a cost, which also increases. It is factored into the cost of the tomatoes, the whatever that you will buy. You would see that in here, 15.5 billion Ghana cedis, almost double, 39, in fact, more than double, 39.76 billion in 2022, and in 2023, 57.99 billion. We're expending more, partly because our currency is also where it is. And other currencies, Now, I'm kind of saying, because if now you want to transact and you're going to pay about 16 cedis to $1. 16 cedis to €1. Almost 20 cedis, 19 thereabouts, to one Great British pound. Yeah, if you say currency, I always say name. Pound sterling. Currency, I always say name there. But what is happening to us? You see, we must learn from example. Now, I believe this is the last bit I'll be looking into as well when it comes to the rising prices of food items. Then there is the toilet paper import bill, which is where I intentionally wanted to add this because it's something so basic sometimes you don't even want to look at it. But toilet paper. If you purchase tissue, you will understand. 2021, 10.9 billion expended. It fell in 2022, but look at that, 2023. Almost these two figures combined in millions of Ghana cedis. That one is not in billions, in millions of Ghana cedis. Look at that, toilet paper import bill. Toilet paper. I recently heard the Deputy Finance Minister, Dr. Stephen Amwa, talking about, oh, we import this and we import that. Let's forget about that bill, the import bill that was going to be put in Parliament, because they had too many problems. But I do agree, fundamentally, how can we be importing this much in toilet paper and tissue? You see, if we don't deal with these issues, maybe Benjamin Akakpo will come and expose them and talk a lot about them. But I'm not the one in power. I don't make those decisions. Those in office have to make those decisions. What has happened to the Komenda Sugar Factory? What has happened to Saglemi? What has happened to some of the other projects that the NDC, also when they came from the Kufuor era, they abandoned? If we keep up like this, we will go nowhere as a country. But is that what we want? I get tired talking about some of these issues. I want to talk about some of the very good things happening. But every day is a crisis. And we are all in it. God save our country, yeah? God save Ghana. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. As always, my prayer, God help Ghana and make her great and strong. Thank you for watching.